Oh, hey, hello, everyone. Greetings. And I missed one day in my commitment to read a chapter every day of the 1560 Geneva Bible. I not excusing myself. I definitely fell short yesterday, but I am new at observing Shabbat, as you know, if you follow these readings. And I didn't realize it was going to be like 9:18 p.m. Before Shabbat was over yesterday. I thought it was just right after sundown. So I'm learning that Havdalah on Saturday night can be substantially later than the 24-hour start, or what I thought was a 24-hour start of Shabbat. So I was too worn out last night to pick it up at 10 p.m. But I also thought you might be more awake today at midday. So we're picking up today at Leviticus 17. And it's more trippy demon discussion. I'm not kidding you. You recall that in our last reading, Leviticus 16 of the 1560 Geneva Bible, Founders Bible, the Puritans Bible, the one goat was sacrificed to God on Yom Kippur, what became Yom Kippur, and one goat had the kind of sins of the community heaped on it and was sent out into the wilderness to Azazel. And we talked about how it's not really that clear. What is Azazel? Is it a demon? Is it a place? Is it the wilderness? Is it a demon in the wilderness? Really, really unclear. But definitely there was a strong case for Azazel as some kind of negative entity. Well, in this chapter, we pick up again with a clear admonition from Yahweh against sacrificing to negative entities. And we'll get into why that's so relevant, in my opinion. But just to headline a little bit, we were taught, or I'll say I was taught, but I think it's pretty common in modern, Judaism that's not Orthodox, and modern, Christian denominations. Certainly when we're taught about monotheism, or I'll just speak for myself, I was taught that the innovation of monotheism is that humans discovered one God and realized that all the other idols didn't exist. They were just stone or mud, clay, animals. They were fake. They weren't real deities or divinities or powers of any kind, metaphysically. And that's a very kind of Western Enlightenment, post-Enlightenment view of the world, that it's all sort of mechanical, except if you believe in God, there's this sort of unified higher power above it all that created it. Well, that doesn't seem to be the point of view of God in these chapters. He doesn't seem to be saying, don't worship or sacrifice to these demonic energies because it's a waste of your goat. They don't exist. He seems to be saying, don't whore after them. He's not saying they're not real, right? Now, granted, if you believe that he created everything, then he is, master of and ultimately kind of has dominion over these negative powers. But there's certainly a suggestion in these two chapters, at least, that this planet, this dimension that we're in, includes some negative metaphysical powers that are real. And, there are a lot of reasons not to sacrifice to them, but one of them is it doesn't seem to be because they're not real, they can't do anything. It kind of seems to be in context. They could be real and they could enmesh you in a relationship with, these demonic or dark energies through your sacrifice to them that God really doesn't want you to be part of. So it really doesn't read like, now, children, that's just child's play. There's no such thing as a real goat demon. There's no such thing as a real demonic power in the wilderness. don't waste your time, come over here with me in the tent of meeting. It doesn't read that way at all. It really reads like, you're surrounded in this dimension by some dark forces, and they could be real. They could be antagonistic to God and his dominion, and God really doesn't want you getting involved with them because they're real, right? So it's a completely different, super trippy, very alien reading. Ironically, because we think that Judeo-Christian Western culture is based on this text, but so few of us read this text, we really inherit this kind of worldview that there's nothing real that is metaphysical on this dimension. Maybe God is real, but he's not really in this dimension. And that is not what God has been saying throughout these books at all, and really not specifically with these two chapters. He seems to be saying, on the contrary, I live here with you guys in this dimension just as I live on high. Or I live on high, and also because I'm God and there are no limitations, I also want to live with you here in this dimension. However, this dimension is full of, minefields, traps, seductions, and spiritual vortices that are negative, that are real, and I don't want you to get caught up in them. I don't want you to whore after them. And the people who worship these demons, these negative entities, and sacrifice to them, they're really misguided, but they're more than misguided. They're a threat. This kind of worship is a threat to a relationship with Yahweh, to a pure life, to, following the right path. And it's full of treachery and risk, spiritual risk, as well as, it seems like other kinds of risk. So it's really, really not kind of wake up out of your stupor, children, stop thinking that these idols of clay and stone are real. They're just clay and stone. He's really not saying that. He really seems to be saying the opposite, that these forces have powers in this dimension. And that they want to get humans, and they can get humans, and God is in combat against them. But in the matrix of free will, right? Humans have to want to not follow the goat demons. So I'm going to jump right in and read from Leviticus 17, the 1560 Geneva Bible. But before I do, I just want you to remember this theme of goats, right? And remember what we talked about yesterday with Leviticus 16, that the scapegoat, the goat that's sent into the wilderness, carrying the children of Israel's sins on its head, essentially, derives from or is placed in context with a lot of other pagan practices at that time involving goats. Specifically, for instance, the goat that's tied up at the foot of the bed of the sick man, and the sickness goes into the goat, or is supposed to go into the goat. So goats do have this eerie power, mostly for, as a conduit to evil, it seems, in this time period, in this place, in the Fertile Crescent, the Sinai, Egypt, Mesopotamia. And the children of Israel are certainly influenced by it. And Yahweh seems clearly to be aware of it. And who knows, maybe goats do archetypally have some connection to the netherworld. Certainly the association in the West of goats with Satan, which is very much a Christian concept, and came, with the elaboration of it, right? The roots of it are right here in the Hebrew Bible. But the way we think of, Satanists, they use goats in their sacrifice, or Satan is goat-headed or has the horns of a goat, or, the bigendered version of Satan has, Beelzebub has a goat's head. That all was elaborated later, in the Catholic Church. But this archetype of the goat connecting to the satanic or the demonic goes all the way back to, the second or third century before the coming of Christ. I'm sorry, second or third millennium before the coming of Christ. So just think about that. These goats are really present in Leviticus 16 and 17, and not in a don't be silly kind of way. They're kind of a very serious presence in the landscape, the spiritual landscape of the children of Israel, and they're very present in what God is trying to tell the children of Israel to do. And by the way, I think I'd have to check, but I think up until this point, when God talks about sacrifices, he talks about sheep or bullocks and doves, but I don't think he talks about goats except in the last chapter. I could be wrong, but that's my impression. Goats seem to be set apart, even though, as we know, for a nomadic tribal society, as this one was, goats and goat milk and goat meat, goat skin are a really important part of the economy and of the kind of commerce, human landscape. We remember the goats from Genesis and how Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, they were all dealing with goats as well as sheep. And then I'm thinking flash forward in the New Testament, Yeshua says that God will separate the sheep from the goats. So that again seems to be part of this dichotomy going all the way back, thousands of years of sheep being benign. Of course, Yeshua became encapsulated in the metaphor of a lamb, and the sacrifice of Yeshua is the sacrifice of a lamb. We've talked about that. And the goats, as in, he'll separate the sheep from the goats, seems to be about separate the good followers of God from those who are not good, who didn't make it, who engaged in pagan or bestial or immoral practices. All right, here we go. Leviticus 17. And as always, you can just go to GenevaBible1560.com, or you can order the beautiful hardcover book. And the subheadline says, all sacrifices must be brought to the door of the tabernacle. To devils may they not offer, they may not eat blood. So this is really interesting. Remember, these subheadlines are not in the text. They're the summaries put out by the translators in 16th century Geneva, who were, running for their lives away from England to create this translation. To them, it was clear that the beings to whom the children of Israel are not supposed to sacrifice are devils, and devils plural, not just one devil, but devils. So that awareness or that implication got lost in subsequent translations. You'll see that by the time it gets to the Revised Standard Version, it's satyr, which is pretty much a pretty neutral, almost cute kind of Hellenistic mythological being, half man, half goat. But no, right here in the 16th century, they are devils. All right. And the Lord spoke unto Moshe, saying, speak unto Aaron and to his sons and to all the children of Israel, and say unto them, this is the thing which the Lord has commanded, saying, whosoever he be of the house of Israel that kills a bullock or lamb or goat in the host, in the community, or that kills it out of the host, outside the camp, and brings it not unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation to offer an offering unto the Lord before the tabernacle of the Lord, blood shall be imputed unto that man. He has shed blood, wherefore, for that reason, that man shall be cut off from among his people. Therefore, the children of Israel shall bring their offerings, which they would offer abroad in the field, meaning instead of sacrificing out in the field, they should bring their sacrifices to the tent of meeting and present them unto the Lord at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation by the priest, and offer them for peace offerings unto the Lord. Then the priest shall sprinkle the blood upon the altar of the Lord before the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and burn the fat for a sweet savor unto the Lord. And they shall no more offer their offerings unto devils. That's Leviticus 17:7. after whom they have gone a whoring. This shall be an ordinance forever unto them in their generations. Also you shall say unto them, whosoever he be of the house of Israel or of the strangers which sojourn among them, that offers a burnt offering or sacrifice, and brings it not unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation to offer it unto the Lord, even that man shall be cut off from his people. Likewise, whosoever he be of the house of Israel or of the strangers that sojourn among them, that eats any blood, I will even set my face against that person that eats blood, and will cut him off from among his people. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it unto you to offer upon the altar, to make an atonement for your souls, for this blood shall make an atonement for the soul. Therefore I say unto the children of Israel, none of you shall eat blood, neither the stranger that sojourns among you shall eat blood. Moreover, whosoever he be of the children of Israel or of the strangers that sojourn among them, which by hunting takes any beast or fowl that may be eaten, he shall pour out the blood thereof and cover it with dust. For the life of all flesh is his blood. It is joined with his life. Therefore I say unto the children of Israel, ye shall eat the blood of no flesh, for the life of all flesh is the blood thereof. Whosoever eats it shall be cut off. And every person that eats it which dies alone, or that which is torn with beasts, whether it be one of the same country or a stranger, he shall both wash his clothes and wash himself in water, and be unclean unto the evening. After he shall be clean. But if he wash them not, nor wash his flesh, then he shall bear his iniquity. All right. So that is very interesting. And I'm going to go now to the Revised Standard Version. But one thing, I'm so glad that Rhett Bierman said that. Rhett Bierman said, woe like those adrenochrome degenerates. Bingo. Like, I really didn't think when I was just reading through the Hebrew Bible and the Geneva Bible that we'd come right up against incredibly deep metaphysical conundrums, including things that we would like to think are not real in the present day. And certainly the first many times I heard about adrenochrome, I thought that is nonsense. I even was once at a Health Freedom Festival, and a woman came up to me and said that she had worked for a big pharma company and that for sure they were producing adrenochrome. And I didn't report on it because I didn't even investigate it because it sounded so insane. However, it is getting very difficult to ignore the theme of ingesting blood that seems to be very common and public and in your face in pop culture these days. Whatever you may think of stories about adrenochrome. And that is weird. But it's not that weird if you read this chapter, because all Satanism for hundreds of years, well, not all of it, but the root of Satanism, as I understand it, is to invert theocracy, right? To mock and turn upside down the actual, especially Judeo-Christian worship of God. I mean, Satanism comes out of the Judeo-Christian tradition. It's a mockery and an inversion of Judeo-Christian iconography. I can't speak to, Satan-like practices and other religious traditions. I know that, Hinduism, for instance, has plenty of negative deities, right? But specifically, our Western Satanism consistently is a mockery of God, a mockery of the host, a mockery of the Catholic Mass, the inversion of the crucifix, and on and on and on. So you could, without reading these chapters, just think, that's really weird. Pop stars and music videos are full of images of people ingesting blood or being bathed in blood. And then you read Leviticus 17, and it's right there. The blood is the life of the animal. It's not like the blood is derived from the life of the animal, or, you know, the blood and the life are kind of related to each other mechanically. It literally says the life of the animal, and we'll look at the Hebrew, is in the blood. So don't eat it, because you're being kind of a, I don't know what, it's almost beyond cannibalism. You're doing something so profane to God's creation, right? Ingesting the actual soul, you know, the being of the thing you're eating, instead of just its flesh. And so, I'm sorry, I'm laughing because Darcy Ann says, why does this crazy bitch keep showing up in my feed? Fucking psycho. You can just switch me right off, Darcy Ann. You don't even have to listen. So just block me. So going back to Leviticus 17, God is specifically saying, don't sacrifice in a profane way out in the middle of the field. You know, come to a holy place, come to the Holy of Holies, do it in a holy way, and don't, you know, eat the blood of animals that you hunt. Pour out the blood, or animals that you kill, or animals that you sacrifice. Pour out the blood and cover it with dust, right? It's not just pour it out. It's like, give it a decent burial. So you can see that any ingesting of blood is like literally a mockery of how God specifically advises us to treat blood, right? The blood of animals. And I also want you to notice one other thing before we go on to the Revised Standard Version. You also, I really want you to notice, because Judaism has been constructed as exclusive and excluding other people. And honestly, I think that's a mistranslation, or I think that's a distillation of a message over the course of many painful centuries, right, in which we were persecuted, that isn't there the way we think it is in the original text. And what I mean is, many places in the Hebrew where God is giving instruction or even creating a celebration, he includes the children of Israel and the strangers or sojourners in your midst, meaning not the children of Israel, but friends or allies or comrades or co-workers who are not of your religion or ethnicity, but who are living in your community. And I think that's so important. You know, the rules God is giving don't exclude non-Israelites. There's some special responsibilities for Israelites, which we can dive into, which is why there are 7 Noahide laws and 10 commandments, right? But the 7 Noahide laws are for everybody. Shabbat is for everybody. Circumcision is even for people who are not Israelites who choose to be circumcised, as I recall that passage. Many sections so far have said, you know, include the people who are living with you who don't worship me, who are not members of this particular tribe. You know, invite them in, invite them to share in this knowledge and in this set of responsibilities, and to enter into a moral relationship with me. So again, I'm not going to say that they're identical, because obviously, you know, who knows the context in which this was written. The children of Israel, the leaders of the children of Israel, were definitely trying to reinforce the identity of the children of Israel versus all these other people around them. And definitely, you know, some things God asks the children of Israel to do are specifically for, you know, responsibilities for that tribe, the descendants of Abraham, right? But lots of other things, important things like this, you know, how to eat in a pure way, how to sacrifice in a pure way. He includes the non-Israelites, the non-children of Israel. I'm not going to say non-Jews, because Judaism hasn't really been invented yet. It's in the process of being invented. But, you know, in Hebrew, the word is actually goyim, and it's not negative, as I've said before. It just means nations, but nations who are not the nation of Israel, right? They are invited to by God specifically, not by Moshe, not by Aaron, from the host of the party, right? They are invited to come participate along with the children of Israel. I haven't heard a rabbi yell at me yet about this interpretation of mine. I think it's correct. When I went to Chabad, as I mentioned 3 weekends ago, there were more non-Jews at my table than Jews. So, there's a reason I'm trying to bring these readings as much as possible to a Christian or Muslim or Hindu or non-Jewish audience as to a Jewish audience. I really notice, partly because it's been written out of history, that God is inviting non-Israelites as well as Israelites to be part of this sacred conversation and this sacred relationship. Now, when we get to Yeshua, he definitely reiterates that the teachings are for Jews, but also for non-Jews. But it's there from the start. That's not a radical revision, I don't think, that Yeshua is making, because right here in Leviticus and earlier in Exodus, there were invitations to the stranger or the sojourner in your midst. And even the word stranger is not as negative as it sounds in English. The literal word for stranger or strange is zar. And I believe that we'll see that in this passage, the Hebrew that is used for sojourner, someone like passing through or living there who's not of the tribe, is ger. And it's like your neighbor, but not your family, right? So I just really want you to bear that in mind as we go into the Revised Standard Version. So let's look at the Revised Standard Version. Let's look at some of those key passages. How do they describe the devils? All right, line 6 and 7. And the priest shall sprinkle the blood on the altar of the Lord at the door of the tent of meeting, and burn the fat for a pleasing odor to the Lord. And you remember that phrase, reach nichoach, a comforting spirit. So they shall no more slay their sacrifices for satyrs, after whom they play the harlot. This shall be a statute forever to them throughout their generations. Well, I don't know. It's certainly more serious than satyrs, right? Again, a satyr is just a minor figure in Greek mythology, half man, half goat. Pan is a satyr, as I recall, the god of music, and it's much more serious than satyrs in the original. And then let's take a look at the blood. All right, and this is line 11. I'll start with line 10. If any man of the house of Israel or of the strangers that sojourn among them, so this is everybody, eats any blood, I will set my face against that person who eats blood and will cut him off from among his people. For the life, and this is line 11, for the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it for you upon the altar to make atonement for your souls, for it is the blood that makes atonement by reason of the life. Therefore, I have said to the people of Israel, no person among you shall eat blood, neither shall any stranger who sojourns among you eat blood. Any man also of the people of Israel or of the strangers that sojourn among them, who takes in hunting any beast or bird that may be eaten, shall pour out its blood and cover it with dust. For the life of every creature is the blood of it. Therefore, I have said to the people of Israel, you shall not eat the blood of any creature, for the life of every creature is its blood. Whoever eats it shall be cut off. So there's a lot of repetition there. And not only is there repetition of the life of the creature is the blood of it, it's repeated like 4 or 5 times, but I'm also noticing, which I didn't highlight the first time around, that even non-Israelites are expected essentially to keep kosher, to eat within the laws of purity. And to this day, and this is true in Islam and in Judaism, but I think we've mentioned it before, but it's really relevant in this chapter. To this day, kosher meat is drained of blood. and animals are sacrificed or slaughtered in a kosher slaughterhouse in a different way than they are in agribusiness big slaughterhouse. They're sacrificed in such a way as to minimize the trauma and pain, which I think is lovely. But they're also drained of blood, and it's a very big deal to not eat blood pudding, or not eat non-kosher meat because of specifically Leviticus 17, where you're told don't eat the blood. And non-kosher meat is not slaughtered in that way. In fact, you can think for yourself when you take out, it's actually grossing me out right now, and I'm beginning to think I want to source my meat differently. But when you take out some hamburger, frozen hamburger, and you let it thaw, a pool of blood, coagulates at the bottom of it, right? If you take non-kosher chicken, sometimes there will be like blood coming out of it. It's truly disgusting. But we're told really don't do it like that. Drain the blood, don't eat it, and don't just drain it, but cover it with dust, like bury it respectfully, right? Because the life of the animal is in the blood. So that's fascinating. And I just want you to know that when the strangers who sojourn are included in dietary restrictions, they're really made part of the tribe in certain ways, right? I mean, their worship matters. They're not non-people, right? God wants their purity to be part of his communication with all of his children. And interestingly, he wants the influence of the children of Israel to have an impact on the people who are living with them, a positive impact, that they'll see these laws and rituals and want to participate in them. I think that's fascinating. It's definitely not the way Judaism in relationship to non-Judaism has been constructed subsequently. Again, largely not our fault, because we're constantly being kind of massacred and put in ghettos, from country to country, century to century. But but I think that's created kind of estrangement on both sides that isn't there in the original, right? In the original, we're supposed to have an open door to what would be non-Jews, right? And share with them the wisdom that God gave us about a bunch of things, not about every single responsibility, but about a bunch of things. And Sandy Hardy, hi Sandy, says, pretty pertinent right now in this time when many religions find it normal to sacrifice chickens. Absolutely. And let's see what other people are saying. Red Bierman is rightly saying, separating the sheep from the goats, wheat from the chaff, the righteous from profane, for sure. And we talked often about how this theme of sacred versus profane or unholy or ordinary everyday, it just carries throughout, right? It seems like it's about a bunch of different things, mold in your house and leprosy and menstruating women and childbirth and, sacrificing goats. But really, it's the same big picture in this part of the Hebrew Bible. JP Arotala says, I remember when Naomi Wolf didn't sound like a religious Alex Jones. This is wild. I appreciate all manner of theological discussions and even metaphysical matters, but wow, this is a different level. That Kool-Aid is something else. Well, respectfully, I'm kind of glad you brought that up, because my mind is blown too. But I am not, reading some wacky exegesis from some, random cult that split off in modern times or in ancient times from this religious tradition. I am reading the text. I am reading the actual text. It's not my interpretation. It's in the text. All right. So I just want you guys to think about that. The text is mind blowing. And Occupy War says something else very, very perceptive. And I love it that you guys, maybe you were always doing this, but you're definitely doing it more and more, which I absolutely love, because that's how we're invited to read, I think, these chapters. you're really noticing the metaphors that extend all the way through, and the themes that extend all the way through, and the symbols that extend all the way through. And Occupy War says, no eating of the blood, which is amazing that Jesus Christ offers his blood to his followers. So let me say right now, you're 1,000% correct to notice this. And Yeshua's description of his blood, this is my body, take and eat, this is my blood, which to this day is part of the Latin Mass, or the Catholic Church's Mass. The body of Christ, the blood of Christ. The body of Christ is the wafer, and the blood of Christ is the wine in the communion cup. Is that what it's called? I used to be kind of freaked out by that. Honestly, I'm just being honest. The blood-related discussion that Jesus engaged in, and then the blood-related metaphors in Christianity, like, washed in the blood of the Lamb, which doesn't appear, as I recall, in the Gospels themselves, right? Definitely Yeshua offers his body and blood to his followers. But reading Leviticus 17, I am far less freaked out, and it really makes symbolic sense, because remember, Yeshua's audience would have been intimately familiar, everyday familiar with Leviticus 17, all these chapters. They were living day by day according to this book. And so when Yeshua says, I'm the lamb, take my blood, it's a very profound metaphor, and it's going to take a lot of unpacking, and I'm going to have to read up a lot on it before I unpack it when we get to the New Testament. But very much off the top of our heads, we're really seeing exactly the way Abraham was willing to sacrifice his child to Yeshua to show that, that he was obedient to Yahweh. And then Yahweh substituted a ram for child sacrifice, which was metaphor for, you guys don't have to sacrifice your children to Baal. You can sacrifice goats and sheep, right? It's okay, right? It was a stage in human evolution. Now, like with the, this is my body, this is my blood, it seems as if a reading of that, which is legitimate, could really be, you don't even have to sacrifice the animals anymore. I've taken care of that for you with my sacrifice. Just give me your hearts, or give God your hearts, right? That is a legitimate reading. And I think that's fascinating. I mean, I'm sure there's lots more to be said about that metaphor of blood in Judaism and in Christianity, but it definitely derives from this chapter. Now we're going to go to the Hebrew, and things are just zipping along when there are goat demons to discuss. Things are definitely perking up in terms of the drama, right? As opposed to mold in your walls. And let's go to Vayikra, and this is the Hebrew. And forgive me, I'm going to put on my glasses. Maybe it's easier for me not to put on my glasses. And here we are. Let's take a look at line 8 and line 7. All right. And then that's the goat satyrs. So line 6 is Vizaraka Kohen, and he will throw, the priest, et hadam al izbech, the blood on the altar, Adonai of God, petach ohel, at the opening of the tent moed of meeting, vehiktir hachelev l'reach nichoach le'Adonai. And this will cause the fat to go up in smoke for a pleasing fragrance, or reach nichoach. I love that phrase. A comforting, a soothing wind, a soothing spirit to the Lord. Velo yizbechu od, and they will not sacrifice anymore, et zbechehem, their sacrifices, leseirim, asher hem zonim acharehem. So this is very interesting phrasing. Leseirim. So seir is a goat, but it's also, as you're going to see, translated as a goat demon. Asher hem zonim acharehem. which they prostitute themselves after them. A zonah is literally a prostitute. Chukat olam, it's a law for the world forever. Tiyezot, this will be lehem ledorotam, to you for your generations. So that is very intense. And now let's look at how Yahweh talks about blood, line 11. Ki nefesh habasar badam. It's so straightforward because the spirit of the flesh is in the blood. That's somewhat different from the way it's translated in English. Let's see how it is in English in the Revised Standard Version, line 10. For the life of the flesh is in the blood. It's close. But the spirit, the soul of the flesh is in the blood. Hu ve'ani natativ lachem, and I have therefore given it to you, al hamizbeach, on the altar, lechaper al nafshetechem, to atone upon your souls. Now, this is a repetition of the word nefesh, because the soul of the flesh is in the blood, it says. And I've given it to you on the altar to atone on your souls. Ki hadam hu benefesh yechaper, because the blood, it is in the soul to atone for it or for you. It's a little unclear who's being atoned for there. But this is a beautiful inversion. This is one of those sentences that reads kind of inside out, right? Like it's almost a palindrome. Listen to this. Ki nefesh habasar badam, because the soul of the meat or flesh is in the blood. Hu ve'ani natativ, it is, and I have given lachem ala mizbeach lechaper. I've given it to you on the altar to atone. Al nafshetechem, on your souls. Ki hadam hu banefesh, because the blood is in the soul, yekaper, and it will atone. So it's almost saying, I read this somewhat differently than the translations. It's almost saying, for you too, your soul is in your blood, and it will atone for you. But the translation is, for it is the blood that atones for the soul. That's good enough. And let's see what stranger is in line 12. Al ken amarti, on this I have said, livnei Israel, to the children of Israel, kol nefesh mikem, every soul of you. Do you recognize that repetition of nefesh, nefesh, nefesh? Lo tochal dam, don't eat blood. Vehager hagar betochechem, and the stranger who lives within you, really, lo yochal dam, will not eat blood. And then let's go to line 14, the extra repetition. Ki nefesh kol basar damo, because the soul of every meat or flesh is his blood. Benafshohu, in its soul it is. Ve omar livnei Israel, and I will say to the children of Israel, dam kol basar lo tochelu, the blood of every flesh or meat do not eat. Ki nefesh kol basar damo, because the soul of every meat or flesh is his blood. Hu kol ochlav yekaret, and everyone who eats it will be cut off. And it ends ve'im lo yechanes uve saro, and if he doesn't immerse himself, implies in water and in his flesh, that repetition of basar, lo yechatz v'nasa ono, and he won't wash it himself, pardon me, he will carry his sin. Pardon me, there was some spice in my water. That is weird. So that is the Hebrew, and it's so beautifully repetitive. And Rose Kelleher says, delighted to catch a live blessing from Cork. That's beautiful. I know. Occupy War points out the denotation of the written name of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Yud-He Vav-He, is not meant to be spoken, by the way. I do know that, and I don't really know how to solve that problem. I've been saying Yahweh, which is a kind of an invocation of Yud-He Vav-He. No one knows exactly how it's supposed to be pronounced, but Occupy War is exactly right. You're not supposed to say the name of God at all. And that's why in English transliterations of Orthodox Jewish texts, you'll see G-D. So I really do need advice from a rabbi about that, because I need to know what to say when the text says Yud-He Vav-He. All right. And TJ Gross says, love you, Naomi. May God bless and protect you always. Thank you. Now, let's read about demons and demonology in jewishvirtuallibrary.org. And Sean Rhodes adds very rightly, it is the spirit, John 6:63, KJV, it is the spirit that quickeneth, meaning gives life. The flesh profits nothing. The words that I speak unto you, they are spirit and they are life. So Yeshua is definitely saying that his words kind of take the place of the blood, which is the life. And I think that's, profound and interesting. Shannon Moon DC says, kosher food rules make so much sense to me, thinking how toxins and bacteria build up the higher in the food chain you eat. Honestly, the more I read this, the more I'm starting to think that's really true. I confess, I defrosted some Chinese food that I'd ordered a long time ago before I had my Chabad experience, and I didn't know what kind of meat it was. And it was delicious. And, I ate it with a rice noodle dish with a little ground meat. And then I looked it up after Shabbat was over, and it was pork. So I threw it away. So I know that this seems arbitrary, but the more you dive into it, the more sense it does seem to make. And this thing about blood really does make sense. I mean, blood carries toxins, out of your body into the liver. As I understand it, the liver detoxifies it, goes out of your body in different ways. But yeah, it does make sense to kind of eat cleaner, right? And Red Bierman says, sounds like cannibalism, but yeah, I was turned off by that over half my life ago. But makes sense coming from the times back then and still now in the dark. Darkness can't stand the light, so let your light shine, Naomi. Thank you. Well said. And Krista says, love you and these readings and connecting it all. I didn't expect that it would all connect. And Occupy War rightly says Adonai is a more correct Jewish way of speaking about the Supreme Being. Occupy War is correct. And I have heard that. I do have like a resistance to not giving an exact literal translation. So I'm going to see if there's a more literal way to convey Yud-He Vav-He, other than Adonai, which is a completely separate word, but it does mean my Lord, right? And we talked about Adon, Sir, Lord. I'm sorry. Mayor Clay Henry says, goat bashing, really? That's pretty funny. Deirdre Kavanaugh says, if anyone would have told me back in the 80s that I'd still be reading your lit and generally following you in you pop up discussing the Bible, I couldn't have predicted it either, but our times are pretty dire. And I do feel like we need to go back to the operating instructions, or at least see what it says. Now let's look at demons and demonology. All right. And again, I am not doing anything that is not in the text. So let's look at the introduction. It says, a demon is an evil spirit or devil in the ordinary English usage of the term. This definition is, however, only approximate. In polytheistic religions, the line between gods and demons is a shifting one. In monotheistic systems, evil spirits may be accepted as servants of the one God, so that demonology is bound up with angelology and theology proper, or they may be elevated to the rank of opponents of God. in which case their status as diabolic powers differs from that of demons in polytheism. That's interesting. Moreover, in none of the languages of the ancient Near East, including Hebrew, is there any one general term equivalent to English demon. That's important because English demon comes from daimones, which is Greek. There isn't a Hebrew equivalent. In general, the notion of a demon in the ancient Near East was of a being less powerful than a god and less endowed with individuality. And there's a lot about demonology in the ancient Near East, and they do mention various places in the Hebrew Bible where demons are mentioned. Exodus, Deuteronomy. Now that's interesting. This is very interesting. What was Israel up against? Israel's official religion contrasts sharply with contemporary polytheisms in the role assigned to demons, which in the Bible is practically nil. Magic was prohibited among the Israelites from very early times. For already the oldest collection of laws, the Book of the Covenant, contains the command, "You shall not tolerate a sorceress." And Saul put practitioners of necromancy, wizards, out of the land. Since much of pagan magic was protective, intended to keep demons away or to expel them, obviously Israel's religion aimed at a very radical extirpation of traffic with demons. And that's really what I was trying to say, that the warning against sacrificing to goat spirits, right, or goat demons it does suggest that there's something negative, right? All right. So specific demons, and here's our demon. Foreign gods are called shedim, rendered demons or devils in most translations. The word is related to the Akkadian sedu, demon, good or evil. Now here's our demon, seirim, hairy demons or satyrs, and I would say goat demons rather than satyrs, right, is also applied contemptuously to foreign deities. Leviticus 17:7, we just read that. Chronicles 11:15. These creatures haunt ruins along with Lilith. And then you get into Lilith, Reshet, Dever, Pestilence, Azazel. Here's Azazel. We learned about Azazel. Azazel occurs in the ritual for the Day of Atonement, Leviticus 16:8. Aaron casts lots over two goats, and the one for Azazel is presented alive before the Lord and then released into the wilderness. The ancient Greek and Latin versions understood Azazel as goat that departs, hence the scapegoat of some English versions. Most of the rabbinic commentators and some moderns take Azazel as the name of the place to which the goat is driven. The great majority of moderns regarded Azazel as the personal name of a demon thought to live in the wilderness. The vampire may be mentioned in Proverbs 30:15. You think I'm trippy. The text is trippy. The alukah has two daughters crying, "Give, give." Hebrew alukah may simply mean leech, but since aluk occurs in Arabic literature as the name of a vampire, this fabulous creature and her two daughters may be referred to in its rather difficult passage. And then there's a ton about demons in the New Testament, of course, and in Kabbalah, which I will not go into. But the bottom line is Adonai is clearly warning the people who want to follow him, Israelites and non-Israelites, not to sacrifice to goats, to goat entities, to satyrs, and he uses very graphic language. They must not go whoring after them, and he also is very, very clear that you mustn't ingest blood. And Shannon Moon says, "Oh, thank you. I always appreciate listening to what you say, even though I don't consider myself as traditionally religious." Me either. I always love to hear your interpretations. That's really sweet. Oh, that's really interesting. Your shadow banned. I was listening on computer, switched to phone, and couldn't find, had to search. I am sorry about that. Oh, that's very sweet, but I hope you're not going to have it anytime soon. Well, you guys, we've come to the end of our time together. I've learned so much. I'm not going to be eating blood pudding in my next English breakfast. And I may, recommit to maybe finding and sourcing kosher meat, or at least meat that is slaughtered in a way that's aligned with this directive. It really does make sense. I wish I understood more about why the blood is the life of the flesh. Maybe there's honestly something about our physicality that Yahweh, that Adonai is conveying there that we don't understand yet scientifically. I couldn't help thinking as I was processing this chapter in this section about how these mRNA injections, which I think are so kind of modeled on sort of satanic norms, just like I've written, the lockdowns and the mandates were kind of, the whole COVID ritual is kind of modeled on satanic or anti-God norms. I've written about this and spoken about it a lot, like don't show your face, which is made in the image of God. Don't hug, don't touch, don't sing, don't pray, don't congregate, don't hug your elders, don't be with them when they die, on and on and on. This injection specifically ruins the blood. It clots the blood. There's, visible differences apparently between the blood of the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. And I don't know what the people who formulated this horrible injection may have known about the role of blood in maintaining a connection to the divine, right? I don't know, right? But blood seems to come up a lot as a powerful, potent symbol. And the other thing I do want to mention is a recent interview with a credible scientist. He had found that these injections are destroying the pineal gland, and many thoughtful people have posited that the pineal gland is a connection to the divine, like helps you kind of feel God, essentially. Obviously, I don't know literally what these terms mean. I'm a post-Enlightenment nonfiction writer. I try not to go off into Never Never Land of things we can't prove, but I do believe that inference is important, right? Like reasoning backwards, like what are they aiming at? And we should notice that they aimed at the blood, they aimed intentionally not at the pineal gland. So, and the whole undertaking has been an anti-God undertaking. As I've said many times before, the intensity with which our connection to the divine was targeted led me paradoxically to believe more literally in the divine, right? Because why would all these, billions of dollars and thousands of, thoughtful and influential people be enlisted in something to destroy something that doesn't exist, right? So I'm not sure what the takeaway there is, but I would say I've been talking a lot about, remedies and detoxing. And one of the things I worry about a lot is cleaning the blood, keeping the circulation going because of these injections and how they clot and how they, create their protein barriers being discovered in 3-year-old children, when their mothers were vaccinated. So I'll just end this by saying I've got a lot of videos on Outspoken about herbal remedies and herbal support. This may seem unrelated, but I'm not sure it is. I think maybe God is letting us find those ancient remedies again because something so demonic has been done to our physicality. And also these passages remind us that our physicality is not separate from the divine. It's very much part of the divine, created by, it's an avenue to, our life. Remember that it's not just life. It doesn't say Achayim habasar badam. It says Hanefesh habasar badam. The soul, the spirit of the flesh is in the blood. So I guess where I'm going with that is please look after your circulatory system and your lymphatic system. And I've got a lot of videos about how to do that. Take nattokinase if you're vaccinated, please. You can get it from Japan. You can get it on Amazon. Do detoxification, sweat, saunas, rebounding, jump ropes, trampolines, move that lymphatic fluid through your body. I know this seems, I'm almost embarrassed to say it because it's so not elevated, but it's also not elevated, right? Because this was an attack on our bodies. Yahweh Adonai is clearly saying here that our bodies are connected to our souls. The physicality that we're in is connected to our souls, which is connected to him. And So maybe it's okay for me to, let you know that there are some ways to heal blood, some ways to heal lymph, some ways to maybe even heal the pineal gland, which I'll have to look into. And I'll keep posting them as I find them. But for now, I'm just letting you know they're over on Outspoken, where this is going to live as well. And just take care of yourselves, get sunlight, don't do anything that makes it harder for your body to heal you. That's what I would say. And I know that I'm being a Jewish mother and you're not asking for my advice about that, but I'm just throwing it in there because we've been reading about, damage to blood and how important blood is. And in my own separate study with the Pfizer documents, it's, there's been clearly a targeting of the blood. So maybe we're being given the tools to heal even during this horrible crisis. All right, I'll stop there because otherwise I'm going to go down a rabbit hole. But thank you so much for being with me, and I will try to meet with you again tomorrow. Quickly, could you kindly tell me in the comments or email me, is it better for you if I do this at like 1 o'clock Eastern lunchtime, or is it better if I do it in the evening? What's easier for you? Like, 7, 8 o'clock East Coast time. So getting into after work or after school across the country. I can't make it suitable for everywhere in the world, I'm afraid, just because of time zones. But let me know what's best for you, because those are two of our most obvious choices. Find me on Outspoken, on Daily Clout. Please support this effort if you can, and support my team. And I will see you tomorrow. And thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.